Hello, Carol. Robert, look, I went to the meeting that's in my email. Carol is in it too, so that is right. So let me, at least I think it's in my email, but let's go to the meeting that's out on the town website. Can you get to the town website? Okay, go to the town calendar.
Suzanne said she's in.
Oh, good. Now look, this is the meeting that's on the calendar, right?
At this point, I don't know where I got it, and my email has disappeared. I don't know what's happening
Okay,
here.
I'm pretty sure that the calendar, the town calendar, is the same as the email I sent out. But maybe not. Let me make sure Lily's on it. I'll call Lily back. Lil? Robert, are you okay?
Hey, Dick.
Hi, yes.
I tried the calendar invite and your email, none of which worked. And then I went to your email where you sent to the, what's her name at the town to schedule the meeting, and that worked.
Yes, that's what I'm going to tell. Lily? The email address for this meeting, go to the town calendar and click on the link in the calendar. It's 501-917-513 is the meeting ID. 501-917-513 at the top of the calendar. Okay, good.
So
Sorry
Dick,
about
when I used your link and opened Zoom, it said the meeting was scheduled for March 17, 2020.
it was. And that's because I reused the same link, hoping it would be simpler not to keep changing. So Zoom thought it was. I'll have to make a new link on every meeting because I can't just keep copying them over. Okay, well, we've got Lily, we've got Robert. So this is the link that was published. So it's the only one we can actually conduct the meeting on. If we had to use another link, it would be illegal and we'd have to give it up. So you said Jeff is going to call in?
Yeah, I just spoke with him. I thought, well, if anybody could do this, he could. So hold on. Let me just call him and tell him.
Well, there's Chuck.
Okay.
No fry food, no fire.
I have the meeting link. Are you ready to write it down?
Hold on, I'm gonna jump in the other.
Okay.
I'm not seeing the same.
Now we're recording. Excuse me?
So
Chuck, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm not seeing the same. Maybe I've got a different Zoom, but I'm not seeing the chance to see everybody on my
It's called
screen. Where do I
Gallery
look for
View. Are you on a computer or a laptop? What do you want?
computer? But I don't see
Go
that
to the
this time.
top right, and you'll see it says Speaker View or Gallery View. Click
That
on
isn't
Gallery
there
View.
I'm not seeing that this time, actually.
Top,
I don't know
put the
why.
cursor on the top right.
Okay, I've got it. And there's actually an expand the screen symbol, and then there's I'm up there for some reason. My picture, it has me talking. Yeah, I get all the speakers.
You're
so
getting
I'll just look at
gallery
it.
view. You're getting speaker view. You want gallery view.
I will look around under
So
more,
it
maybe.
sounds like you going through your browser. That's what I see. I've never been successful in using Zoom. I use it through my browser, and I don't get the
Oh,
calendar
well,
view option.
I'm sure
Okay,
it's somewhere, though. Well,
If-
I don't know.
that's what I'd expect. Not to worry, I'm good.
Okay. So, here's our agenda. So, how about the minutes? Did anyone have any comments about the minutes?
Robert did, and I revised to what he suggested.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments on the minutes? If not, is there a motion about the minutes?
I move
I
to
propose
accept.
we accept the minutes.
I
Did you-
second.
I'll second that.
Okay, if Dick made the motion, Carol seconded? Okay.
Chuck made the
I'll second
motion, Dick, and Carol seconded.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, we are recording this meeting. And it will be posted on the town's website. Okay, let's put the future agenda discussion to the end. Has anything happened with Truro that anyone's aware of?
Wait, hey, Dick, we should vote on the minutes just to make it official.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is all in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
I hear it's unanimous. Dispense with a roll call vote. Okay, has anything happened on joint actions with Truro? Do we want anything to happen with joint action on Truro vis-a-vis any of the proposals we're dealing with?
We talked at one point, wasn't a proposal, but we talked at one point about, do we want to have some kind of joint meeting with Truro? There are two committees that would be relevant to discuss joint projects. That's all I remember, and that was a while ago, but I
But
haven't heard anything.
are we doing any joint proposal grants? Suzanne, do you know?
But there was an MVP grant, Suzanne?
Yeah.
That we were working on with Truro. Is that still happening?
Suzanne, we don't hear you. I don't think you're muted, though. Suzanne, I
Getting
can't.
some feedback from somewhere.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Suzanne. There you go. No?
No, we can't hear you, Suzanne.
Is your volume up?
She's not muted. The only person who's muted is Jeff.
Can't hear you.
Suzanne, do you have the phone number to call in?
Do we want to go into another item?
Okay, yes, let's do that. This is not technology at its finest.
No, it's not.
The 5-year energy plan, does anyone have anything on that? It's part of, I think, the 5-year plan, which I haven't heard much about. We are supposed to have a 5-year plan.
I thought you and Lily were going to draft something. Is that
We
not
drafted
right?
something a long time ago and voted on it. I'm going to stick with that. We submitted it close to 2 years ago.
That was for the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
we had
Yeah,
the glorious
I have-
vision of being net zero by 2030.
Right.
We voted on that. Maybe 2050 is more realistic, and 50% of 1990 by 10 years. But
I haven't heard anything about the comprehensive plan at all myself.
okay, look, I'm trying to push to have an actual timetable for going to net zero. And the actual timetable, I think, should align with what the state said. Governor Baker announced net zero by 2050. The state Senate said, okay, that's good, but by 2030, we should be at 50% of the 1990 levels. That's 10 years from now. And it's going to be tough to do. Robert, are you talking to someone else? I'm going to mute you. I think I'm going to mute you. I muted Robert.
Oh, that's much better. Nothing personal to Robert.
It should be in 10 years, I think we
Uh-oh.
can adopt the goal of 50% of the 1990 level, which is ambitious because we're above the 1990 level now. But that's what the state law set as a target. So I don't think it's too ambitious to say we'll go along with this, what the state we hope is going to adopt.
Yeah, that is the Senate,
Right.
but it's in the House. Doesn't mean that the House is going to, pass something like that. I think we should, before
I
we.
know they're not going to pass it, but the goal is still 2050. That's still the goal. The question is, how do you get to 2050 without having intermediate goals? Just like our previous goal, which said we'd get to net zero by 2030, we're not going to get there, but we should have some goal that we have some chance towards working towards.
Do you think that you could present to the select board two possible alternatives? One would be 50% of the 1990 usage, and a second position might be 50% of current usage.
Yeah, but it'll take us 2 years to find out what current usage is because they're 2 years behind.
I mean, the idea of binding us to 30 years ago.
Yeah, but binding us is a funny word because there's nothing required except that's what we start planning towards.
I don't like to have plans, and I don't know, in my own view, is to have a plan that is realistic and something to work. I just saying, it just sort of seems weird.
What would you do? Okay, so let's talk about it. What would we do differently in a plan if it were 1990 or 2020?
What I'm really looking for is what are the metrics and how do we measure it to show improvement?
Okay, so the metric for town usage is what we're collecting for the Global Covenant of Members of Mayors and the Green Community Plan, right? The metric for what we do, let me see if I can unmute Robert. What we do for the town as a whole, I think we're relying on the Cape Cod Commission to collect those metrics. And the state, hopefully.
Yeah.
And they're not doing a lot right now. They're still floundering, but nonetheless, it puts some pressure on them to move forward. I think we know what the 1990 levels were. What we don't know is the current levels or even last year's levels.
Yeah, I would agree with what Robert said last time. And I think what Jeff is saying too is you want to be realistic. If there's if there's a way to get there and we know, that it's you know, it's a responsible solution, or there are responsible solutions,
So,
that would be one thing. But I mean, just to say numbers, I don't know.
well,
I don't
we'd say it's not realistic, but the real question is, suppose it were 2020, what would you do differently if we said 2020 than if we said 1990? I mean, we'd still have to have a very aggressive plan to reduce everything we can think of. Right?
Right.
So there's no difference in what we actually do, depending on what goal we have.
Part of what that makes me think of. Yeah, part of what makes me think of.
I don't like using the line.
Excuse me? Robert?
Sorry. I don't like using the argument about what we think is realistic, because what is realistic is a function of how much effort is actually put into this objective. And it's one of the problems all along has been not getting a sufficient level of commitment to really solve the problems. I look at this and say, with the current amount of support, the 2050 objective is also impossible. And we've literally done nothing about solving the major pieces of that problem, which include building, heating, and transportation. And no one has come up with a plan that really addresses those issues. That doesn't make me then want to put in a number for 2050 that's quote realistic. I don't think any of those numbers are realistic under the current level of commitment. So I don't know how to, I don't want to put in something there which is a made up number out of the blue, but I don't like the idea of saying, putting in a number there that I know isn't very good in the first place, and also under current circumstances.
I guess we lost Robert. Can I just suggest that it isn't as key that the main thing I think that you want to try to be doing is like what we see with all of the COVID-19, and that is we just want to be able to demonstrate in an ongoing basis that the numbers are coming down. And by 2024, 2025, we can look at increasing the slope. But at this point, to just get something where we're starting to put a metric, getting the town to really look at that metric and then really focusing to decrease that metric so that it's coming down. I mean, isn't that the most important thing that we as a community can be doing?
Well,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Jeff, I don't think it's unrealistic as we might say. As Robert pointed out, there are two key elements: home heating and transportation. I'm fairly optimistic that within a couple of years, electric cars will start taking over the market, especially with the right pushing, because I think that they're going to be cheaper, just plain cheaper to buy an electric car than a gas engine car within a few years. And they're cheaper to operate and cheaper to maintain, but I think they'll be cheaper to buy within a couple of years. So I don't think that that's so unrealistic. And to affect residential heating, the thing we've got to do is to start switching from fossil fuels to electric heating. We started that with convincing people to get heat pumps, but I think we've got to continue that.
One of the things that it seems to me we could do is everybody wants metrics. We all want to measure. Everyone believes in that. We want to have targets that are doable. But at the same time, if we think about the urgency of the situation, I start to think about it a little bit differently. So I wonder if we can do kind of a parallel process. So one track is figuring out, if we decide to do this, what the 1990 levels are, or whatever baseline we want to pick. but not just do nothing until we have that. So track 2 would be what you're saying, Dick, is to push on heating and transportation, to push on energy efficiency, renewable energy, all that business, regardless of the metrics of, we need to measure for sure, but we also have to do things. We also have to act. And so part of me thinks we should, if we have the bandwidth, if we can push on the program side, the action end, and at the same time, try to figure out how we're going to measure it in parallel.
Because by the time we get around to measuring it, we'll be using 2-year-old data anyway.
Well, okay. I mean, I think the measurement can be an enemy of action, is what I'm saying.
Right. So I agree with you. We have to do both. I'm not saying that we shouldn't measure.
Right.
I agree. It shouldn't stop us. The point is that what would we do differently if we had one target or another target? The bottom line is we're going to do exactly what David said. We'd work on transportation. We'd work on residential heating. We don't have a lot of what they call commercial heating, but we do have a new high school coming up, which falls into the commercial. And so I think that no matter what metric we use, we have to do something about the high school. So let me ask, does anybody know if the high school is on the warrant for the fall town meeting?
Don't know.
Put off because they missed the deadline.
Don't know.
It was on the warrant, but I don't know, if they've revised it yet. I mean, the town meeting isn't until October 15th or something.
Right.
So,
But they published a warrant, right?
they did, and it was on the warrant, when they were going through it. But who knows if it's going to be on the warrant later.
Did they revise and cut down the warrant?
I
As
don't know.
Hmm?
I don't know that. I believe somebody was talking about it, but I don't know. I know they talked about it because they didn't know if the state was going to mandate them to actually have a town meeting in June or not.
Right.
So they said if it was going to be in June, they wanted to cut the warrant articles significantly and only do the ones that they needed to do. But I don't think they ever took action on that.
Okay, well, we should find out. But I think we should begin some publicity about why it's not acceptable to come up with a new school that won't be net zero because it will last 50 years. Maybe we should try a letter writing campaign. We should get back on the agenda of the select board. We can get their attention, but not just let this settle, to try to maybe take a position that says unless they can come up with a net zero high school, the Energy Committee is going to oppose it. Mostly because we'll have to have a major retrofit within 10 or 15 years.
Dick, I agree with all those things. I wonder if we could, in addition to that, sooner rather than later, arrange an actual meeting with the high school building committee. We've had various contacts with individuals on that, but an actual meeting where we talk with them.
Yes, but I think it's the superintendent who's key to it.
Okay, so we meet with the superintendent, whatever, in addition to public education, meeting with the select board. I'm just saying we could reach out directly to the people that are in charge of the project.
Good.
I always come back to the fact that we serve at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen. So I would, and I understand they're very busy with the pandemic and also with opening up right now and all of those issues. So this is not a priority for them for their meetings, but the other way we could approach it is, again,
already written to
the
select
town
board.
administrator, but the town administrator, I don't think Dan's gonna take a meeting with us, or, I don't know if you wanna try to give him a call, Dick. You know, that might be,
Which town administrator? Have they picked the new one yet?
they
Oh,
did.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
he won't
He
be on
doesn't,
until the
it
1st
doesn't
of
come out until
August.
August, oh,
The question is, did they extend,
Wait, David, did they pick a new administrator?
Yes,
Yeah.
Maria
New administrator.
Broadbent.
but did they
Maria
extend?
Broadbent. She's actually, hopefully will be terrific. She has a very strong track record in energy and environmental and
Environment.
climate issues. But
The select board approved
Yes.
negotiating with her.
yes, correct. I don't know if they finished the negotiations yet.
They chose her.
But they did choose her. They're in the middle of working out the details, as I understand it.
And what is her start date if everything works out?
in August.
August 1. August 1st.
August 31, I think.
No,
I think
no.
it's the end of August. The question I don't know is, originally, Dan was going to put in, to terminate on June 30th. There was some question whether the board was asking him to extend that, and I don't know what the, I don't know what the status of that is.
So I've heard two dates, August 1st and August 30th.
The newspaper said the 1st of August. So it was 30 days discrepancy between what they'd originally hoped for.
Oh,
She,
okay.
she set the date for the 1st of August rather than, that's how I read it, Lily. I'm not, I just read it from the Independent.
Do you know what it is, David, or do you hear?
I believe well, first of all, I don't know what her start date is. I'm not sure it's finalized yet, honestly. But I do know that Dan did agree with the select board to stay on longer than June 30th. And I think he was open-ended about that too. The idea being to try to have a little bit of an overlap with the new person coming in. So I don't think he gave a specific date for his departure, but I assume it's going to be connected with the actual start date of Maria. And I don't know when that is for sure.
But it would clear, whether it's the 1st or the 30th of August, it would be Maria who's going to have to shepherd this through. It's going to end up in her lap, not Dan's lap.
Right. But we could, that's right. That's right. So I would say we could wait in terms of the town administrator piece, but we could, I suppose, try to get on the select board agenda and at least talk to them about the broad issue of net zero, and specifically, maybe especially specifically, about the high school
We've
project.
tried. We just tried. Dick and I
No, I know. They said no.
together, and they said no. They said not now. We're too busy.
So
Yeah.
how about if we go to the building committee, Dick?
Well, I mean,
Okay,
I
why
think
don't
we
you
need to
send it-
have the permission of either the select board or the town administrator, because we're really basically going against what they've already decided. So, I
Not
mean,
necessarily, Lily.
Well,
I don't think our hands are absolutely tied because we've asked them, as was right, but we can still talk to other people. Every time we do something, we don't need the select board's permission to do it. We can't take any action on our own, except as individual citizens, get up at town meeting and say the energy committee voted to oppose the high school, which we can do on our own, all right? Because we're citizens.
but
And
I think,
the only power we have.
I find it uncomfortable to, because they've already made the decision that they're agreeing with the building committee about the plan that's been proposed. So
But they haven't discussed the issue of net zero in that context.
I understand that, but I would think that it would make sense, good common sense anyway, to be able to talk with them about that. And if they're too busy now, and then maybe just even having a conversation with Dan and saying, look, we understand everybody's too busy, but we're interested. We think it makes sense to try to at least pursue this. Do you think there's an objection for moving forward in that direction?
Lily, we can say that, and we should. I agree with that. But there has to be some reason for them to want to talk to us. And the only reason they would want to talk to us is because we're going to oppose it at town meeting unless they talk to us.
No, I think the rationale makes sense, Dick, though. I mean, I really do. I think, you know, and I think that if you had, I think probably it's your place to call Dan and just have a 5-minute conversation and say, you know, we'd like to try to have a meeting with the superintendent and meeting with the building design committee and explain this. And maybe he would say, yeah, go for it, you know, or I don't think the board would have an issue with it.
So let's say I'll write a letter to Brian, to the superintendent, saying that we have serious concerns about the fact that the building is not net zero, especially in the light of the stated goal of the governor that the state will be net zero by 2050, which implies intermediate goals in 2030 and 2040, in that in order to meet the intermediate targets, not to mention the final target, the building will need to be a net zero building. Therefore, we foresee the need that if it goes as forward as planned, we foresee there'll be a need for a major revision within 10 or 15 years. And because of that, we don't think we can support the building. How about that? Would that get his attention?
Yep, I like it. I agree with that.
Okay.
I still think that we're missing a piece here. It's like talking about the residents of the town using propane and fuel oil, and how are we going to change that? What
That's a
route
separate piece.
will get us where that's possible? And it may be a separate piece, but the reality of it, that's where all the junk is coming from. The town buildings are a small fraction of this totality. I'm not, I think what you're talking about is relevant, but I think that we're, what?
But Robert, we need to address residential home heating. Absolutely. Our approach to that is to convert people to heat pumps. Okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're trying to do is find everybody agrees with all these things. I think what we're trying to do right now is come up with a specific next step regarding the high school that does not diminish anything about home heating oil or propane or anything else. If we could just agree on a next step for the high school situation, then we can move on to how we're going to handle the other areas. How about that?
It just seems to me that part of this story is getting the people in the town really behind making these changes. You know, the select board ultimately, you know, is affected by how the people in the town feel. And if we don't get the people in the town to feel strongly about doing this, then that's a weakness in this whole strategy.
Right.
But we can argue with the select board. The select board
outer Cape energized meetings over a 6 or a 9 month period in which we were pushing home heat pumps, and it's only getting better. So we know what we have to do in that regard. We will have to do what we've been doing with Outer Cape Energized, push home heat pumps.
Now, none of these things are mutually exclusive. We need to educate the community. We should probably have community meetings about net zero 2050, home heating, transportation, all that stuff. If we could do a whole series of community meetings, and at the very same time, in parallel, we can certainly try to move forward on our concerns about the high school. We don't have to pick one or the other. It all matters.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't suggest dropping the high school issue. I just think we have
Suzanne Ryan.
a picture as
Join the
broad as
meeting.
what you just said.
Who joined the meeting?
Suzanne did.
Oh, you
She
joined
needed the
on your
first
phone?
number. 'Cause she,
I just checked with Fred McGee, who's the liaison with the school system. And he got back to me. He said that the vote's been on the school has been pushed out until the fall, but nobody knows what the coordination is yet. What you might want to, though, consider as a very first step is if this is being pushed to the fall, why not approach the 4 towns that make up the Nossett School District and have a joint statement by the energy committees of the 4 towns?
that makes sense.
It does. We should contact Orleans and Brewster. There is no energy committee in Eastham. So we could, and I did write to both of those. I didn't hear back from Kevin Clements in Orleans or from the Brewster guy, but we will. Now there's a little more time. Remember, whatever resolution gets passed has to be identical in all 4 towns.
Right.
That probably means that the resolution that's put forward has to come from the school committee. So I think the next step is to do both. Talk to the school committee, and meaning the superintendent, and also start pushing with the Brewster and the Orleans Energy Committees to get
And
them.
not to forget Truro, right, too?
Truro doesn't have a vote,
They don't.
no.
Okay.
Because they're not paying the,
Oh, okay, okay.
they're not one of the 4 towns that needs to pass it at
Yeah,
town.
okay.
Unfortunately, because Higgins Steel would be a big help, but,
Right.
Truro says,
You could
we'll just pay
contact-
the money.
You could contact the town administrator for Eastham, since there is no energy committee.
Right, Jacqueline, yeah. Right. We should. They have a assistant administrator who's working with Cape Energize, right? Who was it in Eastham who did all the
Right.
coordination?
Yeah, he came to some of the meetings. I'm forgetting his name, but yeah.
Yeah. Forgetting names is,
Yeah, it's very common these days.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask you, as far as protocol is concerned, since the select board has made a stand, on this already, given the history, do you think that it's really wise for us to, to proceed without their knowledge or blessing and without the town administrators?
well,
We're talking to
yeah,
East
yeah,
town administrator, we're talking to, other energy committees. I just feel that it's not appropriate. I just think just a procedure.
The fact that they
Lily,
don't have an
the
energy committee.
selectmen have said they're too busy. If we can do that at this time, because they are too busy with other functions,
All right.
and have at least an agreement or a discussion, it seems like something that they would not be objecting to. They just said, we got too much on our plate. So this seems like it's definitely our objection. It's our concern. It's our thrust to say, hey, you've missed this. And there seems to be another 4 months, 3 months, a couple of months in order for us to work on it so that it doesn't show up at town meeting, which is the last thing they want, is us to say, we're not going to let Wellfleet pass this and we have the agreement agreed. If Orleans and Brewster are going to do the same thing, we have a can of worms. But if we can at least talk to Tom Conrad and see what his take is, whether it's even possible. But
As I said to you guys before, I had understood from basically when they came into our committee and talking with Fred, who's in contact with them on our, like I am with you guys. And it was determined that there wasn't going to be enough money to be able to replace and go with a net zero on the power plant for that building. Now, you guys raised an objection I think it's a reasonable objection. What you want to do is to try to gain some others that would feel the same way. And it's going to be presented. There's going to be other issues with the school besides energy, but I think you guys want to be able to express a very legitimate concern.
No, I don't disagree that I think it's very legitimate, and I think it's really worthwhile pursuing, and I think that there's a good chance of getting funding even, moving forward, and it makes sense. I think it would make sense to the other towns. I'm talking about procedure, that's all.
What if we sent a letter, since they don't have the time to meet, which we understand? What if we sent a letter, maybe it's even the same letter, to Dan Hort and the select board, and just say, this is an issue we're concerned about. We're going to talk to other towns, or however you want to word it, Dick. And that way they would be at least informed if they can't talk about it with us. And that would be a compromise position on this, maybe.
Yeah, and I would say, if you have any objections, please let us know. But
Right.
we would like to move forward with reaching out to these other towns and perhaps even the state about funding. So, let's.
Right.
Okay, but I'm not going to put into it that we need their permission to talk to other energy committees.
No, I don't think you should, Dick. We don't need their
permission.
permission, but you're just informing them of this issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Let them know about the issue.
Right.
Yeah, well, the last thing you want is for Jackie Beebe to get on, some like the select board and councilors monthly meeting and say something, and have Janet Reinhardt, who's now the president, be totally caught off guard. That would not be cool.
Right. So I think a simple letter would take care of that.
And the letter would go to simultaneously to Conrad, to our administrator, to our select board, and maybe to the chairs of the energy committees in the other towns.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's really the same message.
Right.
Yeah, I support that.
Okay. I'll draft it. I'll circulate it for comments. I'm sure there'll be plenty. Okay. But I'll try to make it short and succinct.
Oh, you're good at that, Dick.
Yeah, right. Or long-winded and verbose. Okay, that's my action, right? And to be sure, we'll try to get it out by Friday of this week.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, because there's no sense putting it off. So now,
Okay, so then
now
there's
let me
Robert's
plan.
point about
high
heating.
school. We've got the high school.
Right.
Doing. As Robert points out, we also have to worry about town residential usage and home heating. Now, we know what we do about that. We have an Outer Cape Energized type program.
Right.
I mean, we want to start that again.
Well, Dick, one thing first, I would say yes, but the other thing, the key partner, it would seem to me like it has been all along, would be Cape Light Compact.
That's for the energy conservation, yes.
Well, but also for home heating. Air source heat
We
pumps.
partnered with that Cape and
No, I know it was Cape and Island. No, we partnered with Self-Reliance, but I'm just saying going forward, I thought that there was a piece of what Cape Light Compact is doing that would allow us to pull them in on not just the energy efficiency, but on the heating system issue.
Not really. They have some money. Currently, it's 200. It's enough for 250 families Cape-wide, and they're all low income. So
Okay.
we're going to make the biggest, we can pull them in to coordinate, but we're going, and they will pay for 100% heat pumps if you're one of the lucky few.
I mean, they could help with publicity and with a presentation like they did before.
Right, but if we're going to hit people, we're going to have to hit homeowners.
Right, right.
That's where the largest amount of energy is consumed.
Yep.
in home heating oil, right? So that is probably Cape Light Compact can't help us there except with expertise.
Well, we need to make a really convincing case to homeowners to say, this is a good thing for you to do. It'll save you money. Here's how it can be paid for. You know, roll through the numbers, kind of like we did before about solar. We need to do that for heating.
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, the home energy conversion was our weakest link in Outer Cape Energy.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Was
Yeah.
we relied on self-reliance instead of going out, finding a dozen vendors on our own and vetting them to whatever standards. So we had vendors that people could say, I'm interested. How do I go forward? Here's a list of 12 vendors, pick 3 and get estimates.
Right.
All right. And maybe we can contact the vendors in advance to say, do you want to be on our list? If you do, tell us you'll show up at some of our meetings and sell your wares.
Well, and in a way it does sort of replicate in a different way the Outer Cape Energized stuff, because I'm not saying we should do all this, but it was helpful to have the buy-in by all the select boards and have the town seal on our materials. And to say that we did a competitive bidding process, all that was helpful with solar. The question is, can we orchestrate all of that for?
Is there any state program or template or anything to do that?
I don't know.
Can I bring up the elephant in the
There's
room
something
here?
called the Solarized Plus program, which added home heating to solar. And I think they had a standalone program. But here was the reason we didn't go with the state program. They want to set up a standardized contract. This is their model, where a vendor agrees to quote a fixed price in terms of units per BTU, and then they do a competition and you pick one vendor. Our issue with that was twofold. One, we couldn't see how vendors could bid on a standard price because 2/3 of it was dependent on a home inspection, namely how much it would cost in electricity, which depends on how far your fuse box is from where you're putting the heating in, whether you have to rewire the house, and 2, how far the plumbing is. And that all varies from house to house. So we couldn't see how you could get a reasonable bid. Secondly, the only people who would go in for a statewide bid are the E.F. Winslows of the world,
Right.
big vendors. And we wanted to favor the small local guys instead of the big Cape-wide guys.
Yeah.
So that's why we went the way we did.
Right.
So I still want to favor local guys, and they tend to be 1- and 2-person companies, and we're lucky to get them to come to a meeting. They're never going to give us an RFP that a lawyer has to go through.
Right.
Why the solar companies do.
Right.
But on the other hand, there are some towns that did do that, and I should contact them, or maybe you want to, David, to see how they fared on home heating, because a couple of them did go with the Solarized Plus. I think on the North Shore, like Groton or up there, they did use Solarized Plus and did home heating oil. I mean, air source heat pumps.
And that would have been through the Clean Energy Center of the
Yeah,
state.
in SEC.
Yeah, so they would have, I could,
SEC and find out who's done a home heating program and how it fared, and maybe they've changed their terms lately.
Can I talk about, as a homeowner, what to me, I hear you guys talking, but if you've got a forced hot water heating system, please tell me how solar is going to help
Not
me.
solar. and it's not solar, it's air source heat pumps.
Which means I've got to I've got to essentially ignore my infrastructure of my forced hot water system in my house. And you're going to,
Sure.
you're going to convince people.
Hot water runs at about 150 degrees, right? So the
Yeah,
question
I
is,
mean,
can the
whatever you
heat
haven't said.
come up that high?
Probably not that high. Yeah, it's probably about 120, whatever.
Well, I don't know. It's a good question, Jeff.
I mean, that to me is, if you're telling me that like in my addition, I put in a heat pump, but my existing house was all forced hot water. I switched from oil to propane, but I don't see any path that, other than, I guess, forego that, and which is a tough one, I think.
That's a good question. I don't
No,
know.
I think anybody who had, somebody could have put in a new oil burner 2 years ago, or there's lots of reasons why it's hard. And it seems to me the only real answer to achieve this at scale is to have a sufficiently effective program, in particular, financing rebates, making the case that there's going to be energy savings over the next 20 years, et cetera. There has to be a compelling financial reason, to your point, Jeff, to go through that significant a change in the heating system in somebody's house.
And I think, you know, if that to me it just seems like a big objection for people to say, I've already got this whole infrastructure, it's paid for, it's in my house. I hear you're right. And I just say, to me, that's the really,
Right.
that's a hard nut. How are you going to address that
thing-
between now and 2050? I don't know.
The other thing is, Jeff, that we're talking about the next 30 years. And over that next 30 years, a large percentage of those heating systems are going to be replaced anyway. And we want people to start thinking about, if you're replacing it, go to an air source or a ground source heat pump.
What I'll do, everybody, is I'll contact the CEC about the other towns that have done something like this, but I'll also just ask them directly, what do you know that's available through you or some other state agency regarding this home heating issue? And I'll see what I can find out.
And
How
also,
about
while
CLC?
you're at it, talk about Jeff's point. Ask them if anyone sells a system that takes advantage of radiators in the house already, but pairs them with air source heat pumps.
Right.
Maybe there is a.
Well,
system,
different,
maybe
it's a
there isn't.
different technology, but I would expect that Cape Light Compact has had a program for supplying to, okay, the Pond Hill School, but they've actually had a vetting process for installers that they chose the installer for an air source heat pump for the hall. They paid for the whole thing, so we had no objection. But the other 2/3 of the building are all heated with propane, with Rinnai heaters. So like Jeff is putting in an addition or any new construction, they might have and they went for small people. They didn't have the big guys. They didn't have Winslow install it. They had a guy from Eastham. That was Cape Light Compact.
Okay, so we'll ask them for their vendors too.
Well, that would be good. So that's a great point, because Dick, even if their Cape Light Compact is focused on low income, it doesn't mean that some of what they've developed, it couldn't be applied more broadly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So that's
Okay.
the
They have
second
rebate,
part.
yeah.
The third part's going to have to be electric cars. And they're, it's still a few years.
Rebates and
Dick, did you get an electric car?
Nope. Still a few years in the future for me. I wanted a car that will go 300 miles.
Yeah, I think we all need that.
But
Yeah.
Mileage range,
And I'm sorry I didn't now. Because 2 months later, he bought a Tesla. He paid roughly the same price as I did.
Who was that?
Hmm?
Who was that?
My son
Oh,
paid roughly what I did. And he got a Tesla. It isn't four-wheel drive and it isn't high, which were two of my criteria, but maybe I could talk about it.
So, what did you end up getting, a
I know.
hybrid?
Yeah, hybrid, but not a plug-in.
Prius.
They didn't have that.
I
So
think,
the question is, how do we move forward on electric car adoption? Is there something we can do?
Well, we were going to have this show. Maybe we should just try accumulating some best in breed, and at the presentations, just show them, learn about them, and say, consider it for now. Talk about electric cars. For example, from watching my son, I learned a lot of things. One, where you locate the electric meters to recharge. Everyone's worried about locations.
Yeah.
The point is, the biggest recharging station is at your house, because that's where your car spends half its time. But if you're putting them out in public, you want a place, recharges will either take 6 hours or take 30 minutes, depending on how much you're going to invest. So you want the place where people will spend 4 to 6 hours, which is maybe a theater, that's 2 or 3 hours, or a beach where they'll spend 6 hours. Or you want the place where we'll spend 30 minutes, and those are restaurants on the highway. That's where your chargers should go. Not downtown parking lot. Nobody's going to bring their car into town hall for a charge.
Problem though, Dick, is that the technology for these batteries is like a hockey. This is like Moore's law.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, I think that the recharge time is the biggest weakness right now in the electric. If you want to go on a long trip.
Well, but I've seen my son do it. He said, yeah, we went on a long trip. We pulled into a Howard Johnson's or whatever they're called on the highway. We went in for a cup of coffee and the car recharged. When we came out, taking a normal break to go to the bathroom, the car was ready.
As I said, batteries are getting much, they're on an unbelievable technology curve at the moment, both in terms of capacity and shortening the recharge time. So it's a moving target.
Recharge time is constant.
I have a question for you about this, just because I have, a hybrid, and the hybrids lose their charge a lot faster than a gas vehicle. And I learned that the hard way. But I mean, when you have a situation like we have now, where people really aren't going out that much and they're really not doing that much, you have to continually charge these electric vehicles. It may be using more energy than
I can't understand that, Lily, because my charge is my mileage, that's all I care about, is a function of the temperature. So it's the summertime, I'm getting 3 miles a gallon more than I did in the winter. 2 miles a gallon. And I only use the car once every 10 days.
Well,
part of that is your heating.
You're not going to use it, Dick, and it's going to sit. And it's a gas vehicle, you don't have to worry about it as much as you do if it's even a hybrid.
Well, there are 2 batteries. One is the big battery, and one is the 12 volt.
But if it's an electric vehicle, then it has to be constantly charged. I mean, even if you're not using it, you have to continually charge it.
Oh, you trickle charge it, you mean?
Well, you're going to be using energy in order to do it. I mean, I hadn't even thought of that, but in my experience.
The trickle charge is insignificant in terms of the amount of charge. It's like a light bulb. If you're not using it, it doesn't go down much. It doesn't lose a lot of charge.
And right now, it's like if Dick were to buy his RAV4 now, he'd probably would purchase the plug-in hybrid. And that
have that this year?
Came out this year. And that gives you, on that particular model, 42 miles on one charge which for most of us is more than a day's worth. And I believe that they have some kind of a number. It's like the MPG equivalent, and it's somewhere around 100 miles per gallon. So I
Yeah.
don't think what you're worried about is a big concern. But right now, we've gone from hybrid to plug-in hybrid to electric, and you got a moving target and an evolving technology.
But I would still say we should start educating people about electric cars in general. And yes, it's a moving target. I think it's a couple of years away from being an obvious choice. So obvious we won't be selling anymore. We'll just be encouraging because everyone knows it's a better choice.
You know, everybody, it sounds to me like, you know, just pulling back out of the weeds a little bit, that what we're kind of talking about here is a community education program
Right.
that involves maybe a little net zero overview, electric cars, home heating, maybe energy efficiency. And we could see if we could take advantage of the Zoom technology and or a webinar format to begin to present this program and see if we can get, it would take a lot of work to put it together, but we did it before. And then we'd have to figure out how to get publicity out there so that people would dial in on Zoom or join the webinar.
Yeah. So you want to start before the fall?
I'm just trying to figure out a way to come up with the next step here.
Yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
think I think we should do that as part of our 5 or 10 year plan to get going, to see our way clear towards reducing the energy usage significantly.
I don't see why we need to restrict our view solely to the idea of somehow or other the cost to the person is going to be the driving way of getting people to change. I think, you know, that sounds great. I just think that it's unrealistic. You know, the town collects from each person who has a car registered and wealthy money. I don't see why the amount of money that the town collects couldn't be a function of the characteristics of the vehicle.
That's a state law. It's the state that does that, that sets that rate. So you'd have to take that up with the state. It's the
Well,
state that
you
sets,
know, there are a lot of things that I'm looking at that hinge in some way or other on something that the state could do that would further the situation and that the town can't do. It's like the whole issue with the business about using propane and oil. The same inability to act realistically about what the cost consequences are of using those fuels to heat the house. I don't know. I mean,
Bob,
maybe that's a different topic,
we should lobby the state to do what the state can do. But let's focus on what we can do also. We can educate people, right? We can appeal to their sense of stopping climate change. But the bottom line is people, you have to tell them they're going to save money. For now, because even if you have to take the tax structure into account, saving money is what motivates people.
Well, and there's no question that we can always, like we did before, we can make a dual case. Part of it is it's the right thing to do, climate change, et cetera, and part of it is you can save money. We'd have to figure out a way to make a similar kind of argument in order to have a realistic chance of getting sufficient adoption, I think.
Right.
I have to say that I think that there are a lot of people in Wellfleet that are very aware, and they're going to do things that necessarily may cost them more money. I know when I bought my hybrid, the salesperson actually did an analysis and told me, recommended I shouldn't buy a hybrid because that isn't the driver, for me to do that. So but I know that there's a lot of other people that feel that way. I mean, they're going to invest a little bit more money because it's the right thing to do.
So that's two parts. One is appeal to the idealism. Two is it saves money. And the third part of it is you have to make it easy. That is, you have to give them a way forward when they say, yes, I'm going to do it. Here's what you do, and it's easy to do. They don't have to go out and investigate everything on their own. So those are the three aspects of a program that we would have to put together. But we've done it before. We've done it twice. Once for Stonewall and once for Outer Cape Energize. So yeah, let's just plan to do it again.
If you just tried to, if you present this at a Wellfleet Community Forum, you present like what the big goals are, what the committee's strategy to achieve those goals, and then open up to get feedback from the citizens of the town, that would be a really worthwhile event.
Yeah, well, we can do a forum.
Yep.
Remember, the forum only gets the same 50 people all the time. It's not a couple of hundred. We need a wider audience than the forums. But yes, we will start a publicity program. The library gets a lot of people. Senior centers get a lot of people. The forum gets people.
So everybody, I will volunteer to contact CECCLC. I think they could help us still. And there's another organization that I know has done a lot of successful webinars. And I think they could help with ideas about how they handle publicity. And, you got to have a mailing list. You got to send emails out. You got to get people to sign up. So why don't I take a crack at do some data collection about this, and then I'll get back to everybody.
Okay, here's another thought I'd like to throw out, because you just tried. I didn't think of this as a webinar. I keep thinking of it as old in-person meetings, but it's clearly going to be mass communication. Right? What about our community TV? And I don't mean just a public access meeting. Can we start a program on one of those channels with the Outer Cape on energy?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That would be great.
That would take a lot of programming. We'd have to start working hard on content. But if we did it in 15-minute segments, we could put out the content slowly, so we didn't have to have as much.
Yeah.
Let's think about that too. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it Quibi that's starting at, I think it's 7-minute programs? There was a lot of research done about that. I mean, even thinking about
What
doing
was
it
the name, Lily?
format.
What was the name of it you said?
It's called Quibi or Quibi, I think.
Oh, I don't know about it.
I don't know.
It was. Let me. I just heard about it with my stepson's working on programs.
Okay. Okay. So we've certainly hit this. Susanna, you have a voice. Can you talk to us about what?
Yes, can I just tell you what it is? It's QUIBI, and it's Jeffrey Katzenberg. So you could look at it.
Okay. So Suzanne did not dial in.
Oh, she didn't.
She's,
Oh, there she is. Unmute yourself. We're all on.
No, I'm on the phone.
Oh, boy.
Okay. You have to turn off the sound on your computer because there's an echo.
All right, let me. I'm on mute.
No, it's not.
This has been hell tonight.
Turn off the speaker on your computer.
I'm muted on the computer. You can't even hear me.
We can hear you. You're muted. That says your microphone isn't working. Now turn off your speaker.
All right. Okay, so let's see. Jesus.
What
Okay, is that better?
much?
Are we better now?
Yes, you're fine now.
Okay, all right. I was muted on the phone as well, so I really am pretty
Why unmute?
frustrated. But anyway, okay, so now I'm not hearing anybody else on the meeting.
We can hear you. You have to
can hear
listen
you.
on your phone.
Okay, I think it's okay. I was trying to say, pertaining to the last topic of publicity, would it make sense to, okay, I think I'm on speaker. Would it make sense also to work through the library?
Sure.
Because, you know, they have a great email list. People seem to join a lot of those Zoom meetings.
Yep, that's a great idea.
Yeah, we can get something
So,
Mermaid in their newsletter.
yeah, and I mean, even host it through their website and work through them, because they're very much on the whole climate change issue.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Good idea.
Yeah, good idea. I'll contact Jennifer Wirtkin about that.
Right. They lost their advocate. Who's that young woman who was pushing all the climate
Who-
stuff, took a job in another town.
Oh, who was that? Naomi?
No, the one who was doing their media expert.
I think it was Glynis. Is
Oh.
it Glynis or something like that?
Gabrielle?
Yeah.
Gabrielle, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's down at Brewster.
Right. Took a
Oh,
job in the
Ladies'
same
library.
town as her boyfriend.
She was really good.
Right.
yeah.
But nonetheless, they're certainly welcoming, so we could use the library.
Yeah, I would think. They've held a lot of very informative programs and people really show up. So,
Mhm. Okay.
yeah. So on to grant items. I have the same old two with very little update. One is the Green Communities Grant, which was looking at energy improvement, energy efficiency projects for 4 buildings in town. They are, there's been a lot of back and forth between them and the auditors, Rise Engineering. And so they're finishing up and they should have an announcement about who the grant recipients are, who they are. And that should be happening in July. So that's the update with that. The MPV low-lying roads feasibility assessment or vulnerability assessment, that was turned in June 11th. The application was submitted. Hillary Lemos is the project manager for that. And that went in, and the total amount for that project, and that includes a lot of towns, not just Wellfleet. The project total is $446, let's say $447,000, of
Spread out
which,
all the towns.
what's that?
Spread out over all the towns.
That's for all the towns and what they roughly estimated to be our amount that we would be getting, or, you know, the project for us having that done would cost about 74,000. And then there is that EDA matching grant that would cover that. So that just went in, and the announcements of recipients for that award will probably be in the late summer, early fall.
Okay. Will we get
And
out
then-
of that a plan on what we should be doing next?
Oh yeah, from the hiring of the engineering consultant, yes. They're going, if we do, you mean if we do get that grant money to have that
Mhm.
assessment done?
Yes.
Yes, that'll be it. There will be a part 2 to that project.
Okay.
It'll be a whole new other project. Then lastly, and this speaks to, you know, I was starting to talk earlier this evening about whether we have a partnership with Truro or not. So I guess I do have a little update on that indirectly. Did anybody else sit in on the coastal zoning management listening session about that grant? And I think that was June 4th. I sat in on it, so I don't know if anybody else did, but I can give a report on that. So basically, what that's about, that Wellfleet is applying for it, and they're now in phase 2 of that project, and they're seeking money for their phase 2. So I learned a little bit about it, and basically it's a 4 outer Cape towns, Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown, want to collaborate on setting up a shared database and creating a flexible framework for managing the shoreline, which includes low-lying roads and other vulnerable areas. So, you know, that's all I know about it, but they did receive funding for the first part of that, and now they're about to get something together on the second part of it. But you know, in summary, what that means is that those 4 towns, including Truro, are going to be in collaboration, moving ahead.
From Wellfleet's perspective, who's leading this?
From Wellfleet's perspective, what's that?
Who's leading it from Wellfleet?
Hillary
Hillary, okay.
Lemos.
Okay. Sounds like she's key to a lot of this. Maybe we should invite her to one of our meetings.
I was thinking that, yeah, I think we're going to be working with her a lot, and so should be talking with her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Are we
yeah.
going to have a meeting in the afternoon if we do that, or we should come to one of our evening meetings?
Huh.
Especially since it can be done from a home now.
Right. Yeah, now it's probably more flexible, but yeah. Should we invite her to
Why don't you invite
even the
her?
next meeting?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that would be good.
Okay.
Good idea.
Would you do that?
Okay. I can do it. Yeah.
Okay. So when we set our next meeting, let's tentatively set it for the same 7 o'clock, which I hope I'll remember, but also have in the back of our minds that we might have to have it in the afternoon sometime.
Okay.
Okay. And again, if it had to be a Monday, is Monday afternoon out for anybody?
Tougher for me, but I'm doing my radio in order to record it for Thursday, and it took me till 6 o'clock tonight to finish it up. but I can shift that around if I have to.
Okay.
Any
So
other
we would
day.
prefer the
If we
evening.
were on a holiday or
Yeah. We would
There's not-
prefer the evening, but if it has to be in the afternoon, you can throw that out, okay?
We want to just
yeah,
say
I'll do the
Monday
work
of
right now.
July. Do we make that decision?
Pick a date,
can-
sure, let's pick a date. So here's a calendar. In
July.
July,
20th is the third Monday.
okay,
I don't believe Hillary works on Monday. She doesn't come to the office.
That's true.
ah,
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I'm just mentioning that because I doubt it would be Monday afternoon, but Monday evening might work for her.
okay. So that's the bad week, because that's when both the Cape Light Compact and the Cape Cod Commission meet that week,
Oh,
third week. So that just rules out Wednesday and Thursday. If it had to be, Tuesday's okay for me. So if we have to do it on Tuesday, it would have to be Tuesday or Friday. So let's see if she can do Monday evening, okay?
okay, Monday evening.
How about anybody else? Does anyone else have constraints?
Is it July 20th? Is that what you're talking about?
July 20th would be our first choice, and July 21st, if we have to do it on a Tuesday. Not that I don't have any Zoom meetings planned for that. You all see my calendar, right?
That's right, we do.
Now let me go back to one of these tabs had the agenda on it. Which one? Not the New York Times, not the Washington, not the Boston Globe, not Nauset Neighbors. Nope. Nope. Ah, there we are. Okay, so anything else? Suzanne, did you have anything else? Okay,
I don't.
okay. So let's go through. Does anyone who's a liaison have anything they want to bring up about the committee they're liaison with? No? What about a model bylaw? Is there anything in the works for that? Having to do with resiliency, or David, do you know?
All I know is the work that the Cape Cod Commission is doing. I could not get a completion date from them. Everything slowed down because of the pandemic, but they're supposedly working it, and we'll have something. Probably the fastest way we can get it is through a series of different projects they're working on. They hope to have this so-called toolkit that other towns can use. And I'll just have to follow up with them on a regular basis to see where that's going.
Who are you working with on the commission?
McElroy is your last name. Heather McElroy.
Heather.
Yeah.
That's too bad. She's not exactly a ball of fire.
Yeah, but she's responsive, and she's been pretty good about getting in touch by email. It's better than some people. So.
Right. I think this is in her wheelhouse because it's something that's not radically new. She knows how to do bylaws. They've been around for 50 years. So. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I find it very professional and like David says, very responsive.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I don't want to say. Yes, okay.
Did Robert report on the Global Covenant of Mayors status?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, so what I've been, this stage of what the town is supposed to be doing in respect to their commitment to the global covenant is to come up with proposals specifically for areas that need improvement, both in terms of energy and greenhouse gases and in terms of vulnerability. It was signed by the select board to go through this process, and we have to do the next stage in this. What I've been wrestling with is, just feeling that in respect to the greenhouse gas issue, the weakest part of the whole presentation is the calculations used for transportation and for heating. And those are really so crude that it's painful. But without some other action, involving the state, it's really difficult to improve the information that we have. I mean, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and the process of annual inspections would tell us for all the vehicles in Wellfleet, how many miles they were driven. So that number exists.
did we just lose Robert? We did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
we did.
Okay. So there are two things that go into vehicles. One is the fleet average, and one is how much is driven. Well, here it comes back. Okay. Well, he's still muted, so I think he's trying to get back in.
Okay,
Is there any publication on the?
I'm back.
Yeah.
So what was the last thing that you heard? I don't.
You were telling us about your data collection woes. How the RMV has.
Right. So, those that would deal with, a major component of the, the transportation side of using fossil fuels. And similarly, the issue of how much propane and how much fuel oil is actually being, consumed in the town is another number that we have no, a very crude way of estimating based upon, information that the town has theoretically about all the houses and what kind of heating system they have. It is not maintained and it's way out of date, and there's a lot of stuff missing in it. And so then beyond that, even if we had those numbers, we're not dealing with, well, actually how much did they burn? And as we learned previously, the only supplier of fuel and propane that was willing to give us the information was the place in Orleans.
Was it days?
Snows?
Snows. It was Snows.
Yeah, Snows.
Yeah.
Yes, that was Snows. And no one else. And, so unless we had some way of, of forcing them to, in some form, release that information, is obviously they don't think it's in their interest to do so. So
Wait, Robert, let's pause. Lily?
what's aggravating about that is not only are
Robert, hold on for a minute. Lily,
what?
is it within the charter of the assembly to pass a regulation requiring reporting of fuel deliveries? Does that exceed the authority of the county assembly?
Um, So you're asking, is that in the charter, or what did you
No.
ask?
Does the
I
assembly
couldn't hear.
have the authority to pass a law requiring people who deliver fuel report to the county how much they deliver on a per town basis?
I'll ask. I'll ask around.
Well, why don't we try and shoot for that to help us out? Say, promise to keep it anonymous. The county will publish it only in aggregate, not individual companies, but we'll publish it on a per town basis in aggregate.
I think we asked about that, and they said that it was something that had to be a state law that I think we went down that road a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly what happened, but that's what I recall.
Why don't we go down it again, because the climate has changed.
Hear you. Yeah.
People take it more seriously now. Robert, you're cutting in and out.
So in any case, yeah, I know my computer says it's not a good connection. So anyway, that's the side talking about improving the reporting that we've done so far.
Right.
In respect to the next stage, there are certainly things that can be put in specifically about what we're doing in respect to vulnerability, because we've started along a path there, and it also involves CCC, but there's some things to say about the early stages of investigating how to address those
Robert,
questions.
let's stay
So
on.
that needs to be.
Let's stay on reporting for a minute.
Sorry.
We've talked about home heating and
Yeah. Okay.
we work that, but what about cars? The total amount of gasoline consumed is dependent on the miles per gallon of the car and how far you drive. We're not going to get data on how far they drive at all, as far as I can tell. But the fleet average, we have a shot at. And furthermore, it's the fleet average we're trying to influence, because we're not trying to influence getting people to drive less. We're trying to influence them using more fuel efficient cars. So can we get from anybody what kinds of cars have been registered and from the feds, we can find out what the average for that car is. So will anybody tell us what kinds of cars are registered in Wellfleet? Can we get that from anything that the town has? Carol, you seem to be shaking your head no.
I asked for that from the town clerk, and they said that there was proprietary information in that data, and they couldn't give it to us.
It's proprietary as to what kind of cars people own?
Well, private information, I don't remember exactly what it was, but they
Well,
were not
we
willing
can
to
work that out with the select board, because it's not private. That
It
is,
isn't.
they can report in aggregate, there are so many Ford Fiestas and so many Subarus and so many this, and give us the year, the make, and the model in aggregate without telling us who it is. And it's going to take some work, but maybe we can ask the select board to do that.
Can I share a couple of thoughts?
Excuse me?
Can I share a couple of thoughts?
Sure.
What you might want to consider for the car information would be to ask either Sear or what's her name in Provincetown, our representative.
Sarah Peak.
Sarah Peak. Get some assistance from them to simply ask for that collective information on the cars from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, because they have all that information. But rather than you trying to do it, try to get one of the people in the government to do that for us. That would be on the car side. On the other side, there's an organization called Self-Reliance that I bet a bunch of people in town use for either getting propane or for oil. Now, we're not going to get a complete picture, but if you could get a count of the number, if you contacted them, they might be able to share some information, and then you could have like a per capita. This is what the average household is spending, and then you can extrapolate from there. So those are two places that you might be able to seek some data.
Okay.
I think with Self-Reliance, Carol reminds me, and Robert, didn't we try to reach out to them and, back when we were researching all of this, I know their name was on the list to contact, and I thought one of us did contact them, and it didn't really, they weren't able to give us the type of information we were looking for. And I forget the reasons why. It's been many, many, many months.
Because they don't have any access to it. They have no more access than we do.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I don't remember the name Self-Reliance.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to go look on the spreadsheet and see on our data
Okay.
thing.
I'll write a letter to Julian Sear and Sarah Peak asking them how we can go about getting in aggregate the makes and models and years of all vehicles in our town. Then we'll go to we'll look that stuff up on an EPA database, and I'll try to go to the EPA data and see what I need to put into that so we collect the right information from the state so that we can match it with the database. Okay?
Yep. Sounds good.
And if we can't get it from them, we'll try to get it from the town.
Yeah, that would definitely be very helpful.
Now, the town, we can influence by going to the Board of Selectmen and asking them to ask the town clerk to give us the information. There's a lot more influence than just us asking the town clerk, who will make up phony stories about why in aggregate it's private information. They can either give it to us individually, which is easy, or they can aggregate it themselves, which will take work on their part. And I suspect, given that choice, we'll get the information. Anonymized, we'll get the makes and models, but not the names of the owners. So we'll do that. We'll go to the select board as well. I'll put that in the select board letter. Okay. Good. Rob, I interrupted you. Please go on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
So that, again, that focuses on we discussed both of the issues that I'm most concerned about, which is the building heating and transportation, which I think is important in order for us to judge what effect we have by looking at how many cars become electric cars in that whole list.
And whether people from older cars to newer ones.
What I'm planning on doing now, yeah.
Also moving from old cars getting 15 miles a gallon to newer ones getting 30 miles a gallon makes a difference also.
Right, definitely. So, okay, then what I will be doing is submitting the information on, what we are doing about the vulnerability thing, which is, just the beginnings of formulating a plan, but it's something to put in to the report. And so that's where I am. This report this year, because of the virus, the time for submitting the report has been extended from their usual date in July to currently late August, but maybe that will maybe further delayed depending upon what happens with the virus. But I'm beginning to work on updating that information. I've transferred all of the reporting information from the previous 2018 fiscal to 2019 fiscal. So that'll be the starting point of making further additions. So that's
We
where
have
I
to
am.
go on a meter reading expedition to the firehouse and the school and the library. When is that due?
In terms of it's the, you know, that's the same date.
When is it?
I mean, that information should be updated in the reporting system that we're using for town-owned property, which is, you know, a separate database that's supposed to be updated and is not entirely current at this point in time. That's not something that we are now, you know, responsible for the updating.
Well, I had to go read the meter at the firehouse, the library, and the school. So remember, I promised I'd take someone along next time to do it.
Margaret Song is responsible for collecting that data, so do you
No,
want
but
me
she
to?
doesn't come out there. We have to give it to her. She just collates it. We have to get it.
Right. Do you want me to ask her when it's due?
Sure.
Okay. I'll do that.
And also, someone else should come along with me so someone else knows where the meters are. But we're not going to be able to get into these places, like the library's closed. Right? The school is closed, so it'll probably have to be the fall.
Well, there are people at the library 3 days a week, I think.
But not the
They're not
school.
open, but they could let you in
Yeah, okay.
because they're doing curbside pickup, so they're preparing
How
things for
about the
people.
school? Is it open?
Don't know that.
Okay. What else, Robert?
I think he said that he was going to go with you to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever.
Yep, that's where I am at this point.
Okay.
I did take a look at the Mass Insight database to get a sense of how much information was missing, and I'm going to have another session with Margaret Song about where parts of that she hasn't put in could be filled in. So. And so that's part of updating the whole town report, a small part of it, but there's no reason for it not being complete. I mean, the way that is worked, it's for the fiscal year 2019, which I guess actually ends the end of this June. It's the fiscal year goes from July 1 to June 30th. Any other questions?
Anyone else? Okay. Collaboration with Cape Cod Commission where possible. I think that was, someone wanted to talk about that. Anyone?
That was just a series of conversations with Heather McElroy, and there's a bunch of follow-ups to that. I did send my notes around to everybody after the last meeting, and I don't have an update other than that right now.
That was very helpful, David. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
So there was a citizens petition that was discussed a few weeks ago at the Cape Cod Commission, that the Cape Cod Commission changed the regional policy plan to adopt a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Chris Powicki brought it forward, and was actually met very favorably. But they put it off for a week to study what they could do about it. The staff was kind of hostile to it, but the commission was very favorable to it. Now, the goal is to reduce greenhouse gases as soon as possible. I would have preferred using more ambitious and specific dates, but it's going to come back before the Cape Cod Commission within a couple of weeks. My prediction is they're going to change the regional policy plan to include greenhouse gas emissions explicitly in about 4 places that Chris outlined, in as far as 6 places that he outlined in his petition. So we may be hearing a little more about that, but the Cape Cod Commission may in fact start doing some of the things we're talking about.
Dick, can you say a little bit about why the staff was hostile to it?
Well,
Which staff?
Well, they weren't exactly hostile. It's just that they kept saying, we're doing all of that, but then they weren't. And that we didn't need to change the regional policy plan because everything was happening. But Heather McElroy said, oh, look, we're doing all this work preserving green space. As if that's going to reduce greenhouse gases.
Yeah, right.
And then somebody said, and they talked about how they're doing all this adaptation, which is hardening and resilience, which they are, and I don't want to find fault with it, but that's not the same as greenhouse gas reduction.
Right.
If that's the analogy, is you're digging this hole, and Chris is saying, stop digging, and they're saying, but we're putting fences around the hole, so no one falls in. So I think they got the message, and now they're going to talk about it a little more. I'm pushing for specific plans along the lines that the state Senate bill outlined. Give us a 10-year plan for reducing residential heating, commercial heating, transportation, an actual plan with goals over the next 10 years. That's my
That's the point of the commission, is that should be in a plan, and the regional policy plan is a framework.
Yes, I agree. It's
So
not in the, it's not in,
Staff, I don't think the staff was hostile. I think the staff went through the points, point by point. There is a staff memo, and they talked about why this was not the appropriate place for this language, that they're going to, as they've said right from the beginning, it's my understanding that they're going to be, and they are working, and they have been working on a climate action plan. And the RPP is something different. So that's my understanding. I listened to the hearing, And it will come before the assembly in whatever happens at the commission. It will come before the assembly. So I wanted to be informed about it. But we learned from this group right before the RPP was written and during the draft process, and also during the vote for it. And the RPP was just adopted. It was just voted on, and it's intended as a framework, not as these specifics. These specifics go into a climate action plan is what the overall philosophy of the Cape Cod Commission has been. That's their stance right from the beginning.
Well, okay. I think that the language that they are advocating will probably be adopted by the commission. So we'll see. And I think that a lot of people feel it could be more specific about.
You don't know if it's going to be ratified by the assembly.
No, we don't.
And also, you don't even. It doesn't even seem like it's feasible to accept it in the RPP from what the staff memo said. I mean, I think it's worth reading the staff memo.
I've read the staff memo very carefully.
Me too.
As I said, the staff
Sorry
memo.
to interrupt, but I have to get off.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on with this. Anyway, that's what the commission is doing right now. Talked about the high school. You want to talk about Planet of Humans, Lily?
Well, I just think that both of these had some value in watching, and I think it's important to have an open mind, and I think it's important to keep informed. And I thought that Planet of the Human had some good points to it, and I think I'm really very interested in inside Bill's brain, decoding Bill Gates. In fact, I would like, if people have seen that, I would like to know, if you've had an open mind and taking a look at it, what your feedback is about it, because I sincerely think that I think it would be really important to explore some of those concepts. One, his designs for these toilets in these places of poverty, I think could possibly help with the 208 kind of planning that each one of the towns are doing. I don't know how feasible it is, but I thought it was a possible idea. And I was really, if anybody in this group has worked hard on closing Plymouth, it's, the nuclear power plant has been me. I've worked on the local level with the boards of selectmen across the Cape and Islands. I worked on this from the state level. I've worked on it on the county level, and I've worked on the national level with the Seashore Advisory Commission. But I was really very intrigued with the approach that Bill Gates took in looking at combating climate change and finding solutions. And he made a statement that the last time nuclear power plants were designed, they were designed with slide rules. There weren't even computers. And that there was another statement in there that the plan that he and this team of brilliant scientists have come up with would be using spent fuel rods in order to, that would be used in this new designed power plant. And you talked about safety, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher. You know, I've done a lot of research and read a lot about science, but I think it's worth talking about, and I think it's worth trying to get your feedback and see if there's ways we can really vet these ideas. Because you know, instead of just closing off, you know, nuclear, no, absolutely not. I mean, my biggest pushback has been the spent fuel rods. What are you going to do with storage? And I think that's a lot of what other people's objections have been over the years that I've heard. But this would actually be using spent fuel rods. And he showed one site in the film where they said that this could power the entire United States for 150 years. So I don't know if anybody's seen these two films, or, you know, this miniseries in the film, and if anybody has
Lily?
to add to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one about the nuclear power, that must have been the third episode of Inside Bill's Brain, and I haven't gotten to that, but I will. The Planet of the Humans. I don't know. It's a very controversial film, and it's been accused of pushing very outdated information on renewable energy. You know, and then the film comes up with this very far-fetched conspiracy idea that billionaires are in on it, and so therefore that's where it's at. And it's once again an energy, a means of energy that's just going to make a few people rich and everybody else same old thing. So you know, there were some things in it that I thought were valid questions, like about biomass and using trees for fuel. That, you know, I don't know how that's being done, but it does sound pretty extreme. But in terms of what it reported on solar energy and wind energy, from what I understand, you know, reading up on it, and then also the accusations of people, I guess Al Gore becoming a billionaire over this and taking money from the lobbyists, the energy lobby and stuff like that. There was a lot of conspiracy theory involved in that film, in my opinion.
Well, as I said, I thought that there were some good points, and I do think that example they gave about the solar was probably a pretty valid point. But I mean, I think that a lot of us on this committee, or probably everybody on this committee, would agree that you don't want to cut down forests to put up big solar projects, that we could do it on places like landfills. But what they were saying about wind was, I thought, very mild. I mean, it's extremely destructive, and it harms the health and safety of people living nearby. A lot of people become very ill. But I do think that, you know, that there were some valid points made.
Extremely out of date. They were 15 years out of date. And the same thing, they never approached, they accused and spent 40 minutes attacking Bill McKibben, but they never took his point that he moved away from biomass 10 years ago when he realized it wasn't a valid direction to go, and they didn't use his point. I was very surprised that Michael Moore, my own feeling was that he would put his name on it. I think it was probably rushed through for Earth Day, and the some of the point by point accounts on that film. I haven't seen Bill's Brain. I also followed Stuart Brand, who was the Whole Earth Catalog guy, and 15 years ago in his the Pragmatist Manifesto, he was saying that the small scale nuclear weapon, it scared me because he was a hero of mine. And I heard Bob Holt made a point by point about a 15-page response to Stuart Brand because of his concerns. God bless Bob Holt and Truro when that was put under Stuart Brand's name. But the Planet of the Humans is pretty well debunked as being out of date. They just didn't bring it up to date. And we all know, as you suggested, Lily, we on this committee know that the last 10 years have been phenomenal in the bringing down of the price of renewables to the point where, you know, that there are countries that are running on renewables. Again, we've made coal unfeasible, and 10 years ago that was not the case. So it's a lot has happened in the last 10 years, and that Planet of the Humans didn't reflect that. I think
Yeah, well,
pretty well presented.
I found that interesting too. I think you might find it interesting to go to their website and see some of their rebuttals to some of the points that you and Suzanne brought up. You know, they said they take on some of those points and they try to put some reason behind why they did it. So I think you'd find that interesting. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that was said, but I thought there were some good points that were made. But I was.
And to make a character judgment on Bill McKibben as him making his money from the, which is specious.
I mean, I'm not saying that everything in there was, I agree with, but, do go, just have an open mind and do read it. It would be interesting for you. I am curious about, I think that the thing that was most intriguing for me is that Bill Gates is really brilliant, as we all know, and he has taken climate change very seriously. He's used a lot of his own personal money, and he's gathered these really brilliant people, scientists together to try to brainstorm and see where, some solutions might be. And, I would, before seeing that, if somebody had said to me, do you think nuclear is an option? I would say absolutely not. But it was presented in such a way that I was like, hey, hold on a minute here. Maybe we should really take a look and really vet this thing, because, it sounded like if you're going to use the spent fuel rods and do it in a safe way, and it really scaled down way, I don't know if that's an answer or not. I really don't. So I thought it would be important to bring it to this group.
Well, thanks for bringing
Lily,
it up.
I saw the thing and I listened to it, and I absolutely agree he's got a feasible solution. The problem was that he said, gee, now we need to run this at scale, and the only place where you can build a nuclear reactor within 18 months is China, because everywhere, or Korea maybe, South Korea, everywhere else, the regulations will tie you down. So he had a deal with China to build a few of them, maybe 30. And then the Trump administration put a kibosh on exports to China, and that was the end of the program. Otherwise, we would have had a demonstration of 20 or 30 of these reactors, and we would have found out if they were any good. I suspect they are, because they designed them for safety. If you lose power, they will shut themselves down by draining. I think they flood the area with water, and that slows down the neutrons and stops the reaction, or maybe drains the water. And that means that the neutrons are flying too fast and the reaction stops. So without power, it will shut itself down. But, that's beyond my pay grade, frankly. Relations between us and China and nuclear reactors is not anything that the Wellfleet Energy Committee is going to do anything about. It may work. It may happen anyway, right?
Well, I think we talk about goals, and it concerns me that we don't have solutions. I mean, so
We do have solutions. We may have better solutions, but we have solutions. Right now, solar energy is very cost effective. Wind energy is very cost effective.
Yeah, but
What we don't have is the infrastructure to move wind energy and solar energy from one part of the country to the other. But nonetheless, there are plenty of places where there's nobody living around there that you can put up wind turbines. And in the desert outside Los Angeles, they put up a 1 square mile solar farm that's going to produce 7% of the electricity for the city of Los Angeles. 7%. And they're paying 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour. We pay 10.
Yeah.
They're paying 1.5 cents.
Yeah.
And they've got batteries. At night, they pay 1.3 cents.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think the health and safety of people nearby should be number one. And
One, there's nobody nearby, and two, there's no.
no, in that example, I have no qualms whatsoever. I think that's a, you know, I don't know specifically about this, but it sounds like it's a really great solution.
And it's a real and it's a mass production of solar.
Well, it sounds like it, you know, I mean, it sounds like something I would not have any objections to. Again, I haven't, you know, looked into that. But I mean, I thought it was interesting just to bring this to the attention of the Energy Committee and, you know, see if people had ideas or feedback at all.
Well, I don't think we're advocating putting up a nuclear reactor in Wellesley, right?
I wasn't thinking that that's what the outcome of this would be, but it's just, I guess, just awareness and just feedback. Yeah.
Okay.
Honest discussion. That's all.
Okay. So there's one more thing we haven't talked about. At one point, it turns out, as part of How to Keep Energized, the town of Wellfleet ended up sponsoring a workshop for electricians.
Yeah.
David?
Right, correct.
I don't know how that got funded
It was
or
at the
how much
library.
money it took,
At the meeting room.
but it went very well. It was at the library.
It was at the library. It was funded, and the training was done through CEC, Mass CEC. And they hired a firm to come in and do the work. And that was a condition of our getting that original grant in the first place, that we would help them put on that training for electricians.
Can I ask you to see if they're willing to do that again?
Sure, yeah.
You know, we may or may not have a solarized or a Mass CEC plan, but if that was a condition, like they want to do it and they're just looking for hosts, it was very well received by all the people in town, the tradesmen, because it meant they didn't have to drive to Hyannis to get the mandatory training that they needed.
Yep.
So they were very happy about that. And I think it would be nice if we could do it again.
Yeah, I
It
got
was so,
to call
it
them
was-
anyway about my other assignments, and I'll ask them that too.
Okay.
it'll also, for the foreseeable future, would have to be virtual or Zoom,
Right.
because it was so packed at the library, you couldn't find a seat. It was
Right.
wild. And and guys were talking outside about how it was working for them, or they were looking for. That was, I think, for them to sort of to interconnect about it as a profession. I think it had a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we should do it again, and it doesn't have to be, maybe we'll have in-person meetings again in the fall or next spring, all right?
Yep.
Do we have the list of attendees?
I don't know, I think our
don't know.
town inspector rounded up all the people.
The original idea of the training was actually focused on electrical inspectors, and then they decided it would be beneficial to get regular electricians there as well.
I'll bet Justin has that list.
Yeah, it was
like
Justin that
Post.
got everybody
Justin
in.
Post.
Justin Post, he's our building inspector. He's a great guy.
Building inspector.
Wouldn't it be cool if we could get some of the electricians who participated in that to join one of our committee meetings and give us their feedback of what they heard?
Good idea.
And then maybe,
Oh,
you know, guys that are out there that may have some, come at this from a whole different perspective, who might be able to really contribute to what we're trying to do.
Jeff, as you say, after having talked to Gar and around our project, it'd be interesting to have electricians' view on how the heat source pumps are working, because some don't have a great, the electricians are the ones that get the calls, and some that are working and some that are having problems. So ours not. They work all winter, and I don't have a problem. But, some pretty much horror stories. So be curious. Yeah, I think there might be some input from them that would be most valuable.
It'd be just great to even get them to talk, you know, just talking to our committee, getting some interaction. I mean, we want to have a program, you know, we want to have an agenda so that we're covering stuff that's really pertinent for them. But I think we could learn a lot and they could be a great ally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they may have some ideas of what really can help them too. Things that we're not even thinking about.
Okay. Well, we're sort of at the end. Any old business anyone wants to bring up?
Dick, was there any new news about the PV on the landfill?
Same thing 1 day later. I'm beginning to wonder whether any of our contracts have penalties in them because we didn't get things
Wow.
done in time.
Right.
Yeah, and the grass is growing on the landfill right up to the top of the panels.
Hmm.
Really?
Well, when they come on, they'll get mowed, right?
No, I don't, but still, it's an example of how it's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dick,
No,
I do
nothing has happened. And until land court opens again and stamps the paperwork, nothing's going to happen. Oh, well. Any
I
old
need a
business?
Roomba for my lawn. Does anybody have one of those?
our clover out in front of the hall is growing so well, we're just going to let it grow up to head high. It's made a great field and it's all in blossom. So I water it. I'm going to turn the water off on my way home. New business. I had a request from a citizen. Ann Price is concerned about 5G. She says, does that have anything to do with the Energy Committee? And I said, no, but 5 antennas and that such, in the same way that Lily brought up the those 2 films.
Tell us the cause of COVID-19 and
There's some Seattle people that might agree with you, but there's concern, and I would just love to get, a 10-minute discussion on where we can go with that.
So I heard one presentation to the Eastham Board of Selectmen because I was sitting there next on the agenda for Outer Cape Energize about a year ago.
Mhm.
And 5G uses very low power transmitters, but lots of them, as far as I know. So I don't know that there's any difference at all between what we've currently got, except that they're spread out, but they're low power.
Okay. Yeah, and it's basically, if the heat doesn't increase at the skin level, there's no, thus far, much concern. But these are a couple of people that I respect their concern, and I just wanted to put it out there that
I
we
don't
would
know.
bring it up at our meeting.
Anyway, I don't think it's
Cogent.
energy related. No, I don't know.
It's microwave energy related, right?
Okay.
But
Maybe that's for the health department.
okay, probably that's the case.
Sort of in the same sort of general topic,
Getting no audio. I'm sorry.
I got a call from somebody who told me that there's an IT bond bill that passed the Senate and is going to the House now. And it would be for that last mile. It's particularly geared for the Outer Cape and even the Berkshires. And it would help with things like telemedicine and Zoom calls and education and emergencies. And that's one of the things that I know Dick has talked a lot about. Well, I mean, you said emergencies. Well, what if people are cut off? How are they going to be able to communicate? And some of these people are down these roads that have no internet connection now.
That
So,
might be.
no,
So you're saying 5G as an alternative to,
what I'm saying is, I mean, I'm not talking about 5G. I'm talking about, something I was going to bring up anyway, because under new business, I don't know what the technology is, but I do know that, we talked about emergency situations and the elderly and people in low-lying roads and people in places that don't have good connection. I mean, it's moving in the House. I'm sorry, it's getting late. It was passed in the House and now it's in the Senate. And it is moving in the Senate, but one of the senators is going to get back to me on just exactly where it is and what the bill number is and all that stuff.
well, I'm all for competition in internet service, but I don't know.
Well, you had mentioned communication with vulnerable population too. I mean,
I want them to be able to drive out of there.
Oh, I thought you were talking about communicating when they were cut off.
Well, that too, in the sense, someone calling them. That is someone who gets on the phone and finds out if they're okay. I was assuming the phone system would still work. Usually does. But anyway,
Okay.
well, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see. Anything else new?
Yeah, that comment you just made, though, refers to the old-fashioned twisted pair coax. I don't know that it applies to voice over IP.
Why not?
If you lose if your internet is down, it's a lot more difficult to keep the internet running than it is to keep a simple coax, I would think. But whatever.
Depends
I
on
mean,
what
the idea
internet
that
is
phones
coming
continue
over.
working even after power went down, I think that's a relic of the past. I don't know if that's true anymore.
I don't know. When the internet goes down, my cell phone still gives me coverage.
Oh. Yeah, well, my landline does not work when the power is cut off.
Yeah, it's not a real landline. It's a voice over IP if you have it through Comcast. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I have my cell phones. We're not going to solve every.
No, but I just thought that might be a tidbit that would be interesting anyway. Okay,
Okay.
Good meeting,
Anything
guys.
else?
all right.
I will try to get this up on the town website within a week or so.
Stay safe.
Thank
Okay.
you, Dick. Everybody stay
So we-
safe.
I'll make a motion.
Suzanne, you're going to
Okay.
get back to us on when our next meeting is? Based on
Suzanne?
Hillary, 21st?
Yes,
20th
right.
or the
We'll
21st
offer the 20th.
20th to 21st, okay.
in the evening and see what
Okay.
you can do.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in
Okay.
favor?
I'll rejoice.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, nice talking to you all. Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Night.